Hello and welcome to the Legislative Report. I'm John Banville. Our guest this week is Senator Joe Robach. Senator Robach, thank you very much for being here.
Great to have the opportunity, John.
There has been a lot of talk coming out of Albany, largely surrounding the on-time state budget. Groups that have normally wouldn't be weighing in on the state budget or would be critical of the state budget have been hailing it as a document that reduces government, holds the line on taxes, and creates jobs. Senator, can you tell us a little bit about the process that led up to the first on-time budget in a while? And can you also tell us what it means to our viewers back home?
Right. Well, there's no question, John. You're right. The public has a tremendous interest, as they should, because the budget is so impactful to their lives in so many ways, both in terms of services, but also how we generate that money, taxes and fees and things that certainly impact them as well. And, I'll pull no punches. I've been very critical over the process and the outcome over the last 2 years when we've had my colleagues from across the aisle, their party being in control of everything, every leader being from New York City, the largest amount of taxes raised in fees ever, $8 billion 2 years ago. And after criticizing the previous legislature for letting the budget get raised at the rate of inflation, they went on to raise it 7 times the rate of inflation. I felt very, very strongly, as I was hearing from people in my district, that this was absolutely the wrong direction for New York to go. So roll it back to our budget 2011, I am not only relieved, but somewhat gratified that we had a budget working in a bipartisan way. And I give a lot of kudos to Governor Cuomo for really setting the parameters and saying what I had been saying for a long time, that we aren't going to raise new taxes. We're going to do this the old-fashioned, hard way, the responsible way, and that we did that utilizing open, transparent conference committees where rank-and-file members got to participate. I had the privilege of co-chairing, along with Keith Wright, the Budget Subcommittee on Human Services, which encompassed a huge area where people could hear and chime in on all the decisions we were trying to make on programming, where we were going to get the revenue, how we were going to do it. It's just so the right thing to do. And again, going back to my Democratic colleagues and the New York City leaders, they trampled on that law the last 2 years. So I really do applaud all the leaders, but the governor for really working to make sure the process got run right. I can't say 100% that that's the only reason why we got the outcome we got, but I certainly think it was a big cause in that. And then to have the budget done not only on time, but a day early, albeit a day, that's the first time that's occurred in almost 30 years. I think 1983 was the last time that occurred. So as someone who's fought for good and open government, I think this was a win. And, not only was I hearing it, but whether it was a Siena poll, a Quinnipiac poll, people across New York, especially upstate New York and the Rochester area, were really clamoring for a different change. We're saying 84% of them said we need to go in a different direction in terms of taxing and spending. We did that in generic terms. I think that's very, very good. I guess I could make it in more everyday terms too. I found it very, very rewarding that working together openly and publicly, unlike the last 2 years, we could deliver what we said we were trying to do before the election in this budget year. No easy task. It was a challenge. I won't say it's perfect, but the direction was right, the timing was right, and clearly this was in direct response to working men and women, people on a fixed income who said, look, we need you to control your spending just like we have to do in these tough economic times, and we did that.
I was going to ask you because for the last couple of years, at least 2 to 3 years, you have basically made a commitment, which is you're not going to support any new taxes, that you were going to create jobs, you're going to control state spending. And you felt that the process really helped achieve that goal. What does this mean to the people of Rochester, of Western New York? Are they going to see programs cut? Is it going to be a fair way to reduce things? Is it more streamlining? How is this working?
Overall, I could just tell you, and let me just read this. So, after years and years of growth, we legitimately cut overall spending 2%, took the budget down from almost $135 billion to approximately $132 billion, a legitimate, not only attempt, delivery of spending less money. We have forced, or we have taken the burden, the majority of the burden has come from state operations, a 10% cut across the board, as I had volunteered to do in my own office over the last 2 years. Even before this, in operating my own budget, healthcare and education were asked to take a 2% cut. We did do some restorations to education, which resulted in less cuts to the districts I represent. City of Rochester actually got more money than they got last year, but diminished the cut to Brighton, Greece, and the Hilton School District. And then healthcare took about a 2% or even greater cut with some efficiencies in other things. When I say healthcare, mostly to the Medicaid program. But overall, I think we were able to keep most important things with a line item in the budget, though maybe at a reduced amount. But, I've said this. These were tough times. And I look at it like family. When you make your family budget, if you're earning, $8,000 less on a $100,000 income, rather than say to one of your kids, hey, you just can't go to college or we're not going to feed you, which no one would do, we say everybody's got to change the way they live just a little bit. I think that's the approach that got done in this year's budget, and I felt that was the right way to go. I mean, ideally, whether you're making your family budget, a budget at your business, your social club, even your church, or your faith-based organization, obviously if you have the same amount of money or more, it's always a little bit easier, and you don't have to make some of the more challenging choices. But we took this head on. And the other thing, again, that people have to understand here, and that's why I applaud working with the governor, who, though he lives in Westchester County now, his roots were in New York City. He really worked hard to deliver and really fight some of the people in his own party who, again, even in these times, even in light of the polls of people wanting us to move in a different direction, many people from New York City were still talking about trying to raise all kinds of taxes and fees. We did the opposite. And not only did we have no new taxes, we actually reduced some taxes for businesses, even took the tax off on clothing for families and working people, unnecessary clothing, I believe under $110. Part of it's going to be $55 and under, then move to $110 and under, solely trying to help families and working men and women. So I really think these were good, responsible things, tough decisions, but ones that had to be made to be responsible in light of the times. And in addition to erasing a $10 billion deficit this year, without any action, we were projecting almost a $15 billion budget for next year, which will now be dramatically reduced. And we're hoping by some of these measures, sending these messages to families, reducing some business taxes, we're hoping will not only keep people in all of New York, but especially upstate New York, but this will improve the economy, help private sector job growth, which everybody needs. If there's any one thing that lifts all boats, if you get a good job in the private sector, not only does it help your family, it helps the town you live in, your community, and makes our whole state stronger. It really lifts everything together, and then you're also going to go out and take your income and, be buying clothes for your kids, food for your family, a car for yourself, whatever. That all helps the economy. So we did those things. And again, I thought it was the right action for the necessary time. No one wished the deficit, but it was here, it was big, and I think for the previous 2 years, we had executives and some of the party, or some of the leaders in both the Senate and the Assembly kind of tried to take the ostrich mentality and said, if we don't pay attention to it, we'll hope it goes away. It wasn't going away, it was getting worse. We did not take that approach this time. We took it right on, working with the governor in a bipartisan way. And I was very happy that the Senate joined him and led the charge on this responsible and necessary budget that, again, we made ourselves do what we had said we were going to do before the election, do what families and businesses are doing now, tighten our belts somewhat, just a little, and delivered this, erased this deficit without raising one new tax. As a matter of fact, even reducing some, especially the important ones to small businesses, and giving a little bit of relief to families and working men and women on sales tax, state sales tax issues.
Well, Senator Robach, you actually raised a very important point that some of our viewers at home may not be aware of. You eliminated a $10 billion deficit.
Correct.
Without raising taxes and without savagely cutting programs and hurting people. I mean, it was almost is it fair to say it was a surgical approach this time, and because everybody had their cards on the table and it was done in open?
Sure, and changes were made and implemented, and I have to be candid, we don't know what the full effect is because there are going to be some state programs and departments that are going to be reduced. So maybe, you might have to wait a little bit longer for your information or provision of service. I hope that's how it will work. But I do think, it was the right way to go. And we could say that. We took the biggest cut ourselves before we asked anybody else to sacrifice. And so I think that was a fair way to do it. And as people say, show we had some skin in the game ourselves, not just asking other people to sacrifice, but, do as I say, not as I do. We kind of flipped that around. And I think the legislature and the governor, worked very closely together on that, as well as said to people, both in the Medicaid area and other areas, if you have a better way that we can reduce expenditures that won't impact service, tell us what that is. We're open to that. We're amenable to trying to do that. And then, of course, there was other measures of trying to eliminate fraud, utilize best practices, managed care in some health areas where we think we could do more for less. We're really trying to do that, and we're trying to take a government that has a reputation of not being efficient and making it as mean and lean as possible, and that's probably a good practice anytime, but now it's an absolute necessity for us to do that, given the economic situation of the country and the state of New York. Hopefully, this will help us turn the corner even a little bit quicker and get out of this economic downturn.
Well, Senator Robach, I want to thank you very much for your time and telling our viewers what the state budget will mean to them and their families in the upcoming year. Thank you again.
Thank you, John.
We'll see you soon.